Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K, and we are having a blast today in studio with Marco and Francesca Sartori, right? Sartori.
Right. Yes, it's correct.
And we are available on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast hangouts, and always represented and sponsored by the original Wine of the Month Club, where we're supporting the new biodynamic wine club called Pure Wine Series, the purest wines on the planet. But we're going to go to northeast Italy today, right?
Right.
And this winery is called Roccolo Grassi. And you're right, Adam. I had tasted these wines before. They were in my computer. I thought they were gorgeous back when I tasted them last time, which I don't remember when that was. But this is a fascinating story. Let me just tell you why. My opinion. I could never work with my sister. We are so different.
I agree.
We are so different. And I don't know, are you guys that much different that you work together? I mean, are you that different, first of all?
Yes,
brother and
we are
sister?
different, and we work together, but maybe we have two different position. I don't know. We work together because we are a small family winery, and it's very important for us that everybody can do everything. Marco is the winemaker, so I don't decide if tomorrow is the time to pick up the grapes or do other things in the cellar. But maybe we decide the philosophy, the project. We work for us, for our vineyard that our grandparents bought more than 50 years ago. So is something too natural that we grow with the vineyard together, and
that's really there's something about the story. There's always something about the story. I mean,
yes.
Wine is about the story, and we're going to peel some of that information back a little bit for the people. I wanted to sort of geographically place the winery for everybody that's listening. We're up in the north east part of Italy, above the Veneto, right in Valpolicella,
right,
which. When we were talking about this earlier, when I was stocking the shelves of my dad's wine shop in the 70s, Valpolicella, Soave, those types of wines were not considered that elegant.
Yeah.
They weren't considered special wines, and they were part of the regular routine. And back in those days, California wine was just becoming popular in the world, and these other wines just didn't seem to have a whole lot of impact. But that's changed a lot in the last 20 years. I've been to 2 Vin Italies, not recently, but we've been to 2, and amazing progression of what's happened in your part of the world. But I want to go back to your grandparents. You said your grandparents started this?
Yeah, they bought our property in 1950, and then really our father started the winery that in the past was more simple, and the Roccolo Grassi really started in 1995 when we bought a new vineyard called Roccolo Grassi that give the name to the winery in a very vocated
Why was it where did the name come from in the first place?
It's the name of the vineyard because our surname is Sartori, and we can't use this brand because in the Valpolicella there is another
there's
old
another
company.
Sartori.
Yes,
of course
yes.
Yeah,
so we choose the name of the vineyard that for us was very important in this hill in a small country village called San Briccio that is about just 2 kilometers from the winery. And in this vineyard we made the Valpolicella Superiore and the Amarone of Valpolicella.
Is the village all about wine? Is that
Yes.
That's what it's about. So the families there are about wine, the neighboring families are about wine. The vineyard that your grandparents bought in 1950, was that planted?
Yes,
and were they
apart, yes.
Were they making wines there?
Yeah.
We were talking about, I think you said they were making sparkling wine for a little while. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which is kind of unusual for the Valpolicella.
Really, they made the more sparkling wine and the simple Valpolicella and simple Amarone. Maybe the wine that you remember in the past.
Have you told your father that you made simple wines and now we're making better wines? Did you tell him this already?
But if I can, when we buy the new vineyard, we change philosophy because in a part of the vineyard there are old vine, and we can use the old vine in the important terroir for start the first small quantity of the bottles for the Amarone, and after we can start plant the new vineyard for increase the number of the bottles of Valpolicella. But we can change completely philosophy because by this new vineyard in a completely different terroir. My father, because before don't can make same wine because don't have a great vineyard in an important terroir. In the another 7 years, we send some vineyard of my father and buy another vineyard in this terroir. At the moment, Roccolo Grassi have about 15 hectares of the vineyard, but only in the best terroir. And in my opinion, for the study of the enology, I learned that if you want to make a great wine, before it's very important the terroir. And after it's very important make a correct work in the vineyard, and after, at the end, a correct work during the vinification in the winery.
Well, to me, clearly the terroir and the quality of the manufacturing is there. Your wines are gorgeous. They're very representative of the area. It's probably one of the best Soaves they've had in a long time. Mm-hmm. So here your father bought this vineyard and he was making average wine, and you guys came along and said, no, we're going to raise the level here, or that your father decided to do this and you came in and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
It's an interesting question. Also for us now, we're thinking what happens was really our father was young because he has about 50 years old, and Marco was about 20 when the Roccolo Grassi started. So close a company that for us was good if we think the business, and the start with Roccolo Grassi for some things was crazy. But maybe was the good moment in the Valpolicella to start to change also the mentality. The viticulture that we and the Valpolicella region do today is not the same that they did in the past. So 40 years ago, we were a region maybe for quantity and not for quality. Mm-hmm. Maybe we were in the good place, in the good moment, so there was we are also lucky, maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't believe in luck in that regard. Luck is preparation and thought meets opportunity, and the opportunity existed, you took advantage of it. And is this a movement of Valpolicella that was occurring in the 50s and 60s and 70s, or the 70s, let's say, or is your family one of the spearhead, like the beginning of this revolution in the wine of quality from Valpolicella? Or is there a consortium of winemakers, or a group of winemakers in Valpolicella that are saying, we want to raise the level of wine? Is that what was happening then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you decided to go to school.
Yeah.
Marco went to school.
Yes.
And you stayed home and did the work while he was out screwing around.
Of course.
Right, okay, good. No, so so you decided you wanted to be a winemaker.
Yeah. I think in Valpolicella area, 25 years ago, there was another probably 3-4 producers that started the revolution. And we arrived at the correct moment for start with a new project. I'm young when I start, and I want to make the difference in the territory. Because I think when I start, I think there are many labels in the market, in the world of the wine, but many winery don't have an identity. And in my opinion, for having a good reputation is very important the quality in the bottles. And we start this idea, this philosophy. And my father understand that there is a new opportunity probably. And the father think, I want, if your child having a dream, I help my child.
Well, that's great.
And after arrived Francesca in the 2004, that understand the philosophy and understand that it's very important help the family for start and a great reputation in the market. And probably, in my opinion, the Italian wine and the Valpolicella wine in these 20 years, 25 years, increase the reputation in the market, because many winery start the work for the quality. Every winery have a different philosophy. Our philosophy is make wine with the identity, personality, best quality. When we have the great harvest, I'm very particular philosophy, probably. But there is the possibility now, because in the world there are some people that want high quality for every territory.
So you knew when you were going to university to get your degree, and you went to 2 universities, right? You went to university?
Before, the first is not university, but is the
Enology school?
Professional school for the enology.
Right.
And after the university in Milan for study only enology.
And did you go then work somewhere else before you came to work with your father?
Before my dream was make a different experience in the world.
Yes,
one
of
in
course.
Italy, one in France, one in the new world. But really, I start in Italy, 2 experience, one in a big cooperative only for understand the work, the
Yes.
manual work, and another in Tuscany, in another winery, for understand the particular work for the red wine particularly. And after I start in the work in my winery in Roccolo Grassi, and during the work in the winery, when I have time, I visit some different winery in Italy, in particular in France, and I buy and I taste many wine of a different region of the world.
Wow, that's great.
It's one of my great passion. I have a group of friends. We buy wine, and every month we make some blending tasting with different wine for understand the quality. We don't want the influence of the price, the label, the name, the vintage, the
So
grape
tell me
variety.
I have friends that just got back from Tuscany, and up until that point, and they're going to get mad at me for saying this because they listen to this podcast. They love Napa Cabernet, and you know I would take them Chianti, and I would take them other wines, and they weren't of interest. Now then they go to Italy for a trip. They only were in Tuscany, unfortunately, but they now come back and they have this appreciation for Sangiovese. So you have the Tuscan grapes, you have Piemonte grapes, you have the grapes from Puglia and Umbria, the grapes of Valpolicella. I know the Corvina and the Soave, not Soave, but the
Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, or Garganega for the Soave.
Now, is that by government rules? Can you grow Syrah there if you feel like it? Can you put Syrah or Cabernet in a Valpolicella? Is that not allowed?
No, for the DOC, you can use, if you want, the 15% of another grape variety, but really in the territory is no more present Cabernet Merlot, because probably the Valpolicella is very traditional wine, but start the present in the big market when the big market want the typical grape variety of the area, the traditional, and don't want in Valpolicella the Cabernet and the Merlot. And the best producers don't use this grape variety in the Valpolicella.
Okay, so it's
we use only the typical grape variety, Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, and in a small quantity, 5%, Usoleta and Croatina, but are 2 different grape variety, typical traditional grape variety of the area. But the Cabernet, Merlot, and Syrah is not present in Valpolicella
Okay,
area.
so here you have super Tuscans, right? And I've even had, if you can believe this, a super Sicilian, whatever that means, right? And now in Bordeaux, they're entertaining non-Bordeaux varietals for certain appellations. So in Bordeaux proper and I think Bordeaux Superior, you're allowed to test some other varietals. And that was in a response to the climate change and the way grapes are ripening. Is any of that an issue for you guys in Valpolicella? Are you seeing any change in the climate change that's forcing us to forcing you to try different things or try different appellations?
Yeah, in Valpolicella Valpolicella is same to the world. The climate change is so much hot sometimes, and some producer change the altitude of the viticultura and change a little bit the percentual of the grape variety. For example, many years ago we used more Corvina, 80%, and a small quantity of Corvinone. In this 10 years, probably some producers increase the percentual of Corvinone and reduction a little bit the quantity of Corvina, and introduce some grape variety, for example Osoleta. Osoleta is very nice grape variety because have an important acidity, more tannic, more color, but in particular the acidity is very important. And when change the climate, sometimes the risk is the acidity, because it's so much low, the acidity. If you work with Corvinone, a little bit increase the percentual, and the altitudine, and the correct work in the vineyard, small quantity of the grape, you can have the balance, and you don't have the problem of the climate that start changing. And in Valpolicella, it's possible they use the irrigation system. The irrigation system sometimes is very, if you use the intelligent
watering system.
Is a very nice.
What would be an unintelligent watering? Just too much water, or okay.
You can, if you don't rain during the summer for 2 months, the risk is the stress for the vine and the stress for the quality of the grape. If you use a small quantity of the water, you can have the correct work of the vine and the correct component inside to the grape and the berry for arrive the correct maturation.
So when you pick, for instance, there's it seems like the phenolic, what they call it phenolic ripeness, which is the whole sort of the whole ripeness and the thickness of the skin and the yeasts and the not just the sugar content anymore, right? We're looking at everything when it comes to picking a grape. Is that your job, or is that your job?
Marco.
Marco, is that there?
Marco,
yeah.
You out there?
My work is strange that I stay here for make this. It's not my work.
Yeah.
My work is
well, you're doing a good job, by the way.
Stay in the vineyard, control the grape, make the wine, make the decantation, put in the barrel the wine, put in the bottles the wine, taste the wine. This is my work. This is my passion. For example, when I decide for pick up the grape, I have some great discussion with my father, for example, because for my father it's okay, and I say, we attend 2 days, but there are the guy that we attend 2 days because we don't arrive the perfect maturity of the phenolic.
Yes.
It's very important, taste the wine, but before it's very important, taste the grape, the skin, for understand the perfect maturity of the skin, the polyphenolic, the quality of the tannic. If you don't arrive at the perfect maturity, you can have the perfect extraction during the fermentation, during the maturation, in particular for the red wine.
Yes.
For the white wine is another problem. The problem is arrive at the perfect maturity with the correct acidity and the correct pH in the wine.
So more popular, and I have very specific customers that look for very specific things, and I do get a lot of phone calls for Amarone. Amarone. Which, how do you say?
Amarone, we say.
Yeah, Amarone. That's
yes,
better.
right.
Yeah. See. I take French lessons, but I don't take Italian lessons.
Sorry?
Okay, so Amarone. So people ask all the time because they love the wine, but they're not sure of the process. And I know there are some variations in the process to make Amarone, but the way you make it, and I didn't ask this question earlier. I wanted to ask it now. Do you look for different ripeness of the grape when you're going to make Amarone from those grapes versus the grapes you pick for the regular Valpolicella? Or is it the same process? You start with the same grape, same phenolic ripeness, but we'll talk about that in a second. But are they the same grapes, or do you pick them at different times?
The grape for the production of Valpolicella and Amarone is same. You can, if you want, change a little bit the percentual of the grape variety, Corvina or Corvinone, but the grape are same. Corvina, Corvinone, and Rondinella, most important grape variety. And 5-10% depend of the produce of another grape variety. But the different for many winery sometimes is the age of the vine. For Roccolo Grassi, it's very important the age of the vine. We use only the old vineyard for the Amarone, and I have some young vineyard, I use in the Valpolicella. But it's very important the process of the production. For the Valpolicella, in general, we use the fresh grape, or there are some produce that use in a small quantity 40-50% of the grape that make a short drying process for 2-3 week, 1 month maximum. In the Amarone, you can use only grape that make a drying process. We start the harvest, the best grape in the vineyard, in my case only the old vineyard, pick up the grape, we put in the plateau in small cases and remain in the building for about 2-3 months.
Okay, so let's hold it right there. So we've picked the grape at regular ripeness, regular phenolic ripeness.
Yes.
You pick the best grapes for this particular, which is your top line wine, your best wine that you make from Roccolo Grassi. So we put them in a plastic tub. What was the traditional method?
The traditional was the wood.
A wood
plateau.
Was it outside or was it inside also?
Oh, inside.
Inside a building.
Yes.
So we have these crates of grapes, which are what, a few feet by a few feet, a meter by a meter.
Depend. We have small and also big.
Oh, I see. Okay. And they are the grapes on top of each other?
No.
Which is
you
one
put
row.
In a singular layer.
Single layer.
And we do direct in the vineyard this work. We make the selection direct in the vineyard, and we put in this plastic plateau. And we do direct in the vineyard because we don't want to touch more time the grapes, because the risk is some berries broken and then the mold or other problem, the bacteria that enter. In particularly, the first 30-40 days where there are a lot of grapes inside the building, inside the cellar. So we use the huge ventilator that during the day and the night move the air.
Okay, so you've got a large room. You've got trays of grapes, one row or one layer each.
Yes.
And now we're actually circulating air through. And how long does this drying go on?
We crush the grape the first week of the December.
So
it's about
90 days?
2 months, month and a half.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, about. But if you want, you can crush after 3 months. Depend of the style of the philosophy. We crush before because we work with small quantity of the grape. The grape have a great concentration, and we want a fresh sensation in the Amarone, and we don't want a sugar residual in the wine. Because if you crush the grape at the end of the December, increase the concentration of the sugar, and the risk is that the yeast can arrive at the end of the fermentation, and you can have some sugar residual in the wine. And for the style of our Amarone Roccolo Grassi, we don't want sugar residual in the wine, because the risk for me is the oxidation in the bottles. I don't have the balance in the wine because there are so much sugar residual.
So that's interesting. So there's no sugar. It's dry.
It's dry.
Absolutely dry.
For me, it's very important dry.
However, the impression when you taste the wine is that there might be sugar there because it's so concentrated. The fruit's so concentrated because you're making it from raisins, effectively, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So that's fascinating to me because there's more sugar now in the grape since it's been drying, right? Since when you press that grape, there's more sugar in that juice than a fresh grape, but you're fermenting it down to zero as much as you can, but you still end up with this wonderfully opulent mid palate with lots of fruit and character. This fascinating wine. And this particular bottle is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Is it become a worldwide trend? Are people receiving Amarone across the world? China, Japan, Germany. I mean, is it a popular thing now?
Yeah, it's popular in many countries, but it's become popular for this reason, because there is some residual sugar that people like, but depend how is the wine. We think that it's better to have a very great, powerful, full body, not high residual sugar, because we think is important the combination with the food and also the aging on the bottles.
Yes. So but there's a complexity to Amarone because of the process that you don't get anywhere else, and there are other places in the world where they do this kind of thing, but there's something special about Amarone. Now, you don't make a ripasso,
right?
No, we don't make the ripasso because the ripasso is a traditional method in Valpolicella, and is the second fermentation of the Valpolicella on the Pomis d'Amarone. And in these 15 years is a great opportunity for the territory and increase the the market for this wine. We decide 20 years ago we don't like the technique of the ripasso for arrive at the maximum quality in the Valpolicella, because in my opinion the risk was have some green tannic. The risk was during the second fermentation some sugar residual in the wine, and I don't like for the style of my great Valpolicella. And in my opinion, the risk was don't arrive at the finesse in the wine.
Yes.
For me, in the wine is very important the concentration, but before I want finesse and complexity.
It's interesting. It just hit me.
But
because
it's an idea. Many producers make a ripasso and make a great quality of the ripasso.
So for the listeners,
But
when you make ripasso,
it's not my wine.
I understand. How do you make ripasso? What would you normally do? Would you crush the Amarone grapes first, and then you tell me the process?
The process, we crash the crash.
If you were to make ripasso,
we crash the grape for make Amarone.
Yeah.
At the end of fermentation of the Amarone, on the pomace of Amarone,
Yes.
we use the pomace of Amarone for make the second fermentation of the regular Valpolicella that we make during the harvest. During the second fermentation, the Valpolicella increase the concentration, the fruit sensation, a little bit of
So
complexity.
how do you make the second fermentation? Have you taken the must of the pomace and put it through the regular Valpolicella
Yes.
and re-inoculated it? Or is already yeasts are already functioning?
No, there are the yeast inside to the pomace.
It's
of
already
Amarone.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And start the second fermentation.
Yeah.
In the pomace, there are about the 10% of the quantity of the juice of Amarone.
Yes.
And start the second fermentation. But in my opinion, I decide for don't make the technique of the ripasso. The risk was, in particular, in sun harvest. If I decide I don't want the pomace for my Amarone because I finished the maturation. I don't sure that in this pomace I have the correct tannic
Oh,
for
that's
my
a good question.
Valpolicella.
All right, you wouldn't know that.
And
yeah.
in particular in sun harvest. And for our philosophy, when the harvest is not great harvest, we decide for don't make Amarone. And if I don't have the production of Amarone, I don't can have the production of the ripasso.
Yeah.
And I don't have two wine. It's not very
Oh,
good for my
that's
economy.
a
It's
business
big-
decision at
it's a
that point,
problem.
right? That's interesting.
And we decide for don't use the technique of the ripasso. But in particular, because I think for arrive the maximum quality in Valpolicella, the core street is not the ripasso, but is having a vineyard for make Amarone and then a vineyard for make Valpolicella. If I have some correct grape in the vineyard of Valpolicella for make Amarone, the grape remain for make Valpolicella.
Mm-hmm.
We reduction the number of the bottles of Amarone, but I can increase the quality of my Valpolicella. But I'm sure that when I exit in the market, I have a great label for Valpolicella and a great label for the Amarone.
I'm going to give you another marketing approach to that conversation, because it seems to me that most ripassos are made to just enrich or make more complex the regular Valpolicella, because they'll call it a poor man's Amarone, whatever you want to call it, but really it seems that you produce ripasso just to add complexity to the Valpolicella. And you already have a very complex Valpolicella. You don't need to run through ripasso to make, because it's rich already. The days that I stocked my dad's shelf, Valpolicella was thin and bright red and acidic. That's what it was. Even I remember this. I was only a teenager. How would I know this? Well, I shouldn't be drinking this stuff anyway. But that's what it was. And you now have produced a well-rounded, balanced, rich Valpolicella right from the vine. You don't need to go through another fermentation.
In my opinion, no.
Yeah, obviously.
Absolutely. We decide for another street, and a street that the wine was born in the vineyard.
Yeah.
And the work in the cellar is only for the respect of the maximum quality of the grape that we have in the vineyard. The ripasso is a technique of work in the winery. It's a fantastic wine, but it's not the style that we love for our wine.
It's interesting
I
to me.
respect the ripasso and the producer that decide
No,
make
and that's
ripasso.
your prerogative as
But,
the winemaker, right? You get to decide that. You're the
Yeah.
family. She gets to help you decide that,
yeah.
right? Because you're the sister. But here's what's interesting to me about Valpolicella and the world of wine, and it's I deal with the consumer here. This is my business. You see my picture of my father here. This is my dad in 1975. Okay, so we've been selling wine for a long time, so we've seen a lot of changes in the industry. We've talked about a couple already. What you see in America now, and I just read a great article about the bulk wines. I'm talking about €1 a liter. Okay, coming to America. What kind of wine is that? How do you say crap in Italian? It has to be, right? For €1, what are you going to get for €1? So it comes to America, gets bottled. It's the argument that this person in the article was making was the following, and it's sort of valid, except for the quality of what we're going to talk about. Well, I might buy a Mercedes-Benz in America, and it could be made in Tennessee, right? So it's still the Mercedes-Benz with their supposed quality level, but it's not made in Germany. It's made in America. So what's wrong with picking a grape in Valpolicella and sending it to Germany and bottling it there? I suppose not a lot, except that person doesn't understand what Marco's saying. The value of the terroir and being there and putting your hand in the soil and knowing when the grape is ripe and smelling the soil and understanding and terroir is not just the dirt and the weather. It's him and you and your father and everybody else that's participating in crafting this beverage, right? So I have a problem with these. And then now we get into the idea that there's a €1 wine that has no value terroir-wise, right? None, zero. It's just a euro wine being bottled. So and the consumer in America is confused right now, because they're getting these Groupon things for $3, and they're from all over the world, and they're not good. And so how do we? Maybe you being here is the exact answer I'm looking for, and that is, how do we get the consumer to understand the value of what you're saying, that this family history, that the terroirs, and I think it's a great example with Valpolicella that you've taken in 20 years or 50 years and raised the level of the quality of the wine because you've expressed the terroir. You didn't do that in 1970. How do we get the consumer to see this?
I think that in the farming, it's very important to understand the difference between the industry and the farming artisan. At €1 or €2, €5, it's impossible make a correct wine. It's impossible.
Okay, all you listeners, you hear that? Impossible.
It's impossible for me. If I think only for one bottles of our wine, between bottles, cork, label, I don't know, we can have €3 of
just for the glass.
Only for this.
Yes.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And before there
but
is
the juice inside.
The price of the terroir, the work, free family that can work is impossible. It's impossible. It's possible if you have an industry and you make a wine, but it's not a wine that I won't drink.
No, you can't drink it.
I prefer drink water.
Yeah. Well,
it's not wine for me because in the wine
it's bitter,
wine is very important the emotion.
Yes.
It's difficult for me say this wine is good or this wine is a great wine, but
when you go
in
home,
the wine, when I drink the wine, it's very important the emotion.
It's been such a pleasure having both of you here. I know you have a full day today. Adam's like looking at his clock. Hey, what's going on? We got to get out of here. But it's been a gorgeous, wonderful conversation. I appreciate the time. I hope I get to see you again, at least maybe in the Valpolicella area.
Why not?
I've been there before.
Yeah. So we wait you, Roccolo Grassi. Okay. It was a great pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.